Hello, youth and parents. Welcome to another Sunday review, and we have our topic relate. And this past Sunday, we looked at how we relate to the world around us. And so we had 4 different things that we looked at, which was first, nonconformity, or not changing to the world around us, but embracing our values and our foundation in God first. The next thing we had was 2, mission and service. 3, we looked at justice, and 4, it was stewardship. So for nonconformity, we looked at the verse Romans 12:2, and we talked just about how we can embrace change and learn how to adapt to it, but we don't need to necessarily change our values and our morals, but rather we should respond in faith. And we need to still remember that we are supposed to be set apart and holy as God is holy. And that includes saying no to things that the world says yes to. You are what you do or what you practice. So it's important to practice the example of what Jesus gave us in the Gospels and to not do things that the world says we are to do, but to do things based on what God tells us to do. Now, instead of looking at TV or maybe video games or scrolling on social media, we should practice instead seeking God and reading His Word and being in prayer or listening to a worship song. Another example too in the Bible comes from Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they didn't conform to what King Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to do, which was bow down to a false idol. They instead stood their ground and stood in their faith and responded in faith and said, we are only going to worship God. And that was even to the point of sacrificing themselves and maybe getting killed because of it. And that is an important example of how we don't need to change with how the world or culture changes, but instead to respond in faith and keep our values and morals. So 2, we looked at missions and service and how we can relate to the world around us in giving. We looked at the verse Luke 10:2-4. And when Jesus calls us to go, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to do it internationally. We can give to our local communities, we can give to our state and even the nation. So it's important that we continue to have our lives that are focused in service and mission, and it doesn't have to be necessarily just a week or a weekend set aside where we do just missions work. We can live a missional life. Heidi Baker has a quote that says, maybe ministry is simply loving the person right in front of you. So hopefully even now as we are at home, we can be missional and serving to the people around us and learning to love them. Missions get us out of our own minds and lives, and it expands our worldview. It teaches us and it challenges us. We should learn that we can serve other people every day and to learn to grow in humility and selflessness. This doesn't have to just be, again, like something we do in the summer or just when the opportunity comes. We should try and seek out places and organizations that we can do missions and serve alongside of them, but also just the people around us, even our neighbor that is next door. We can serve them and do missions work for them. Number 3, we looked at justice, which we talked about in our small group. This word has a lot of different meanings to it, and so it's important to think about what justice means for you and also how God views justice in Scripture and how Jesus also led by example of justice in Scripture. And for what we talked not just about justice for people who do things wrong or punishment, but we looked at restorative justice, which means helping the vulnerable or the widows, the orphans, the needy, and restructuring our system to help people that really need it, that maybe are at the bottom, and to bring them up to a level that is fair and that sees their value and worth. Because all of us are created in God's image, and it's important to try and have an equal ground for people as we help them and as we serve them. And we looked at verses Proverbs 31:8-9, as well as Jeremiah 22:3. And it's important that from things that need to be fixed in our system, Jesus wasn't crucified for being nice, but for being bold and confrontational. Hopefully that's encouraging to you, and that helps you to seek justice in your communities or in your churches or wherever in your life, and that you can continue to confront things and help bring vulnerable populations back to their sight of being made in the image of God. And lastly, 4, we looked at stewardship. And this means to take care of what we have been given and the responsibility that we've been given, being responsible for things in creation. So this is our environment, our animals, and people. A lot of the times our faith can focus on helping other people, but it's important to realize that as we relate to the world around us, that also includes our environment and animals and other things that we do for the environment and for our world. We looked at Genesis 2:4-9 and also verse 15. And basically, God gave Adam and Eve the ability to take care of the garden that He had given them and to work it and take care of it. And He wants us to do the same. Even though we live in a different place, it's still important for us to be good stewards of what we have been given. We also looked at Romans 8:18-21, which referenced the fact that creation is suffering along with us and is broken, and we are a part of God's plan to redeem that. So it's important that we take care of what we have now. And there's some examples of what we can do is just lessen pollution and carpooling. Think about what we are throwing away and our waste things. This is in what we buy and what we eat, and looking at the labels of things and if things are recyclable or helpful to the environment. This means giving away our clothes instead of just throwing them away, and maybe in a garden that you have, what you're growing, what you're producing in the land that you have been given. And so then we talked about how we apply this to our lives, and the application is different for everyone, but some examples that we came up with: for one, nonconformity is just doing practices that are what Jesus did instead of what the world does. So maybe limiting the time that you're on the TV or playing video games or on social media, and instead replacing it with a time that is devoted to the Lord. Some of these practices may include a time of prayer, a time of worship, a time of just journaling or going outside and being in creation. Whatever way you connect with God, maybe just saying, okay, this week I'll do 10 minutes of that on this day, and instead lessen the time that I'm doing something else that is distracting. For 2, missions and service, things that you can do is just try and seek out ways you can help people every day. Maybe that's helping a neighbor with something, or maybe that is searching for an organization that you want to support in some way. That doesn't have to be financially, it could just be in prayer, but looking for ways each week you can help serve someone and be a missionary to those that are just around us for the time being. 3, for justice, this is informing yourself. Look up organizations that are helping different issues in the world, and whatever you're most passionate about, try to inform yourself about it and pray about it. Another thing is to speak up for those injustices. Don't become silent about it, and look for ways that you can also act upon it if that is ever something that happens. And then 4th, stewardship. We talked about just a couple ways that you can help the planet around us, and for each person that looks a little different. You can help by just having and growing a garden if you want. You can carpool. You can, again, give things away or have yard sales for things instead of just throwing things away. But everyone can be a good steward of what they've been given in different ways. So thank you so much. That is our Sunday review.